Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Reynolds, the Chancellor with the Archdiocese of Louisville. Welcome to our podcast series, What's New in ArchLou. This show highlights the people and ministries of the Archdiocese of Louisville, the Catholic Church in Central Kentucky. Join us each month as we welcome guests to discuss what's new in the Archdiocese and invite you to get more involved as you deepen your engagement in your Catholic faith. This program is brought to you by the ArchLou Podcast Network. Well, everyone, we made it to May, which is Derby season, graduation season, first communions, weddings. So much goes on in the month of May, but it's also the time of year when the parishes all begin to prepare for change of pastors. So that led us to a wonderful guest and a wonderful topic today. We welcome Father Anthony Chandler, who is our Vicar for Priests and Director of the Office of Priest Personnel, and he's also the Rector of the Cathedral of the Assumption. Archbishop Thomas Kelly ordained Father Chandler in 1989 to the Archdiocesan priesthood. He was the first native Louisvillian African-American priest ordained for this diocese. Now, he's pastored many parishes in our archdiocese and served on numerous boards in a variety of roles, including serving as the vocation director, as president of the Priest Council, many other roles he's had. Father Chandler has also served the church on the national level, serving for a time as Vice Chancellor for the Archdiocese of the Military Services. And most recently, he was the Interim Executive Director of Catholic Charities in Fort Worth, Texas. Father Chandler, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you very much. Good to be here this morning.
I just did that kind of the formal bio, but how about you take a few minutes and tell us a little bit more about yourself than this bio did? How about
Sure.
that?
Well, I went to St. George Grade School, Bishop David High School, and then from there I had been discerning priesthood for a long time. Took 1 year more to go down to Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green.
Go Toppers.
Go Toppers, go Big Red. And then went to St. Meinrad College, where I graduated with a degree in history and philosophy. And then on to the Catholic University of America, where I did the MA and the STB in theology. Was ordained then in 1989. First assignment was St. Martha. And then after 3 years there, got a phone call from Archbishop. You don't want to get a call from the bishop. Our priests know that. You don't want to get a call from the bishop. But I did, and was sent for the MBA at the University of Maryland, College Park. So that helps, and that will make sense as to why I'm now in this position, because it's an MBA in Human Resource Management.
That's right.
So that's it.
You get to use that degree. Very good. Well, thank you again for being here. We want to talk about several things today. With interest our viewers and our listeners, I want to talk about your role in the office, about priests in general, and about topics that parishioners may wonder about priests that you have the answers to. Okay. We're going to ask you about those things.
All right.
We just announced the appointment of 16 new pastors or administrators, 8 new associate changes, and these things keep changing. This time of year, it's a moving target process. You know, yes. I think 31 different parishes are already affected. That's a big number of our churches. So lots of parishioners are talking about this process. So let's begin with this topic. First, what is a vicar for priests?
Well, first of all, a vicar in the church is someone that the bishop has chosen to run something particular in the church to help him with. And in this case, it is the vicar for priest, vicar for clergy. So I help him to oversee the priest. Whatever the priest needs may be, whether it's health, whether it's help, more priest, sacramental help, whatever that might be. We do anything that we can to aid the priest in his work or in his personal life. So that is the first thing that we do. And we are always then looking at, and hopefully priests will come forward to us. Again, you don't want that call from the bishop, so which that does happen. But hopefully the priest would call us and say, I need, or can you help me with?
Right.
And that's the entire staff of the chancery. That's what we do. We are supposed to be aiding the priest and taking care of the people who belong to the bishop. So that is first and foremost. That's what happens in that office. Now, it's also interesting because in doing all of that, it has helped me to get to know priests better. Because even though I'm a priest 35 years, I don't know all of the priests. Yeah. I think people often think, oh, you all know each other. Well, we don't see each other very often. And if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're supposed to be with the people, not always with each other.
Yeah, right.
So this is, I think sometimes it's really strange when someone says, oh, do you know Father so-and-so? I say, no, I really don't.
So as vicar, you have that leadership role. The office does many things too, right? Could you tell a little more about what the office does?
It does. So right now, of course, one of our big things would be our international priest.
Very good.
And so that office runs that along with Catholic Charities. So we have a number of priests, and we'll talk about that a little later, a number of priests who are coming to us now as missionaries to help us in our work here in the Archdiocese. And so we oversee all of the, along with Catholic Charities, all of the paperwork that is necessary for the government, all the visas, all of that. We also, that office does continuing ed for clergy. That's another big piece of that. So we're always looking at how is it that we are in service to the clergy.
Good, very good. Now, you've been a priest for 35 years, is that right?
That's correct. May 27th.
Okay, very good. Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, it's hard to speak in such broad terms, but tell us about the priests of this diocese. We have a variety of priests, as you said, diocesan priests, religious priests, extern priests, priests from other countries. What's the culture and health of the presbyterate?
That's an interesting question because it really, you would get varied answers depending on who you ask.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
So I would say that we have a very hardworking presbyterate. It's not very big. And I think that is a reality that I want people to take away today, that it is not very big, and therefore we are welcoming other priests to help us in this ministry. But I would say that those priests are very dedicated, and we have even our retired priests who are very dedicated who continue to help those who are in active ministry. So they continue that. So I would think we are still in the job of working and taking care of God's people. That's first and foremost. And now, the thing about us is we range in age from the 20s to the 80s. I mean, we're all the way. So, and I always say to people when I hear from people, you need to look at young people in the world today, and you'll probably see our young priest. You need to look at baby boomers, and you're probably going to see some of our priests. You're going to look at the aged people, you're going to see some of our priests. So we are just right along in line with what you see.
That's really an important description, I think, that a priest is not a single word description. No. There's many, just ages alone.
The age, the thought process, the politics, the theology, the ecclesiology, all of these things make up the presbyterate of the Archdiocese of Louisville.
Well, some of these men, of course, were trained in the 60s, and
Sure.
some were trained in the last couple of years. Just what are some things that have changed during your 35 years in the priesthood? Not just for you personally, but how's the priesthood changed?
Well, I think, first of all, as many of us live alone. I think that is huge, that we no longer live. I mean, I was ordained, I lived with another guy. When I worked in Washington, I lived with 5 other priests and an archbishop. I mean, so most of us live alone. Now, I don't think that's always good.
Yeah.
Because it means then people will say, well, you're like a bachelor. Priests are not bachelors. The priesthood is a lifestyle that is lived in a particular way. We're not bachelors. We may be single. We may not be married, but we're not bachelors. And I think sometimes we have to be careful, even with our priests, that this whole thing about privacy or I want to live alone, that really is not a part of what we are. That has kind of snuck in, I think. And I think we have to be honest about the fact that, no. Priesthood is a lifestyle, and I do share that with my brothers.
When you think of our priests, and like you said, you don't know all of them deeply, but in this job, you get to know all of them.
Oh, yes.
Specifically.
Yes,
But and again, I don't want to use such broad terms that it makes it sound like everybody's the same. They're not. You've already made that clear. So, but in general, priests today, some of the challenges they're facing, what would those be?
Well, I think, too, as we see the culture of the country changing, it is becoming less religious. Mm-hmm. And so I think that some of our guys really struggle with the fact that I have given my life and I'm preaching and I'm teaching and people aren't interested. And I think sometimes they take that personally.
Sure.
But you can't take that personally. I think if you speak to any religious leaders or any preachers or ministers or whatever, this is a struggle. And it's always a struggle of how do we get people to once again say, no, I believe and I'm going to live it out. You know, it's that whole thing about practicing the faith.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes can be downtrodden for guys when they don't see people actively pursuing or doing that.
So sometimes people refer to it as the secular culture.
It's very much so a secular culture.
Dominating things.
Yeah, it really is. And so that's a battle. I mean, and when you're preaching, you have to remember that what is in society is sitting in your pews.
Yeah, yes.
So when you are preaching, you have to make sure that you're hitting some of that, and calling people back. Hey, we're Christians living in a pagan world, if you will, and you have to stand up. A lot of people are afraid to stand up and say, well, no, wait a minute, I don't believe that. And people have to be really, I think, emboldened to do that. So that calls on our preaching, I think, to change too. We have to be a little more forceful, I think, in the preaching about how to live the life in Christ.
One of the things I've noticed about priests in the diocese is the variety of creativity and gifts. I'm going to ask you about that, and it's here. And we've seen it even a couple times over the last years. We even have had a priest variety show. So we've seen their art, their music, their acting. So that's one example. But in their preaching, in their teaching, I know priests who are really good working with young people and they want to help in the high schools, be present to those things. I know others whose bedside manner makes them so lined up to hospital ministry or nursing home care. What are some creative things you've noticed about our priests?
Well, I agree with you. I think that's one big thing. And people will even comment on the specialty of the guy. My mother was sick. Father was there. Oh, my God, he changed the room. The guys who taught school prior, we have a number of priests who were teachers and who, it's another vocation. And I'm sorry to say that we don't have the time for them or the opportunity for them to do that full time anymore, right? Because our parishes have to be covered first. That's first and foremost. But those who are chaplains, those who are able to go teach those classes every once in a while, it really enlivens them. So they're able to use, we have more than one vocation, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the guys do that. You mentioned the art. That's great too. You think about those guys who can build churches, who can decorate churches, those who can draw, those who can, we have all of it. So, and how do we use that?
Yeah, and I've seen how even 20, when you were ordained 35 years ago, I think we had most masses were in one language. Now we have mass in 8 different languages in this diocese. Right. Partially because our people have changed. We now are, this part of Kentucky is much more international than it was before.
And multicultural, sure.
So all those things have changed too. So
Very
the
much
people
so.
have changed, as have the priest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we see a shift, and we were speaking earlier about demographics. We see that in the city. We see it in our rural counties, how people have moved and shifted. And it's always, I think it's always a constant concern of how do we then respond to that. Now, there are all kinds of ways we do respond to it. Now, we have priests, who speak Spanish. We have priests who speak Swahili. We have priests who have come from, we even have a seminary now who speaks, he's from Burundi. So I think it will continue to grow. We have that community at St. Thomas More. We have the Vietnamese at St. John Vianney and all over. So, and then the Hispanic culture. So, and from many different countries,
Now, you spent some time as our vocation director. Thank you for doing that really important ministry as well. What can you tell us about? I'm sure there's a proper answer to this, but also maybe your personal view of this would be helpful. What motivates men to become priests?
God is still calling people to be priests. That's not. He really is.
That's the fundamental.
That's number one. God is still calling people. Now, there's a shift here too. Are those vocations supported?
Oh.
Okay. Now, if years ago, I said to my friends, I think I want to be a priest.
Really?
Not really?
No, I got you, Chandler.
Why do you want to do that? You're not going to make any money. You don't want to get married. And now we even have parents who say, well, I wanted grandchildren.
Wow.
So there's a different emphasis now on the priest was, if you had a priest in the family, oh my God, we have a priest in the family. We have a nun in the family. We have this. And this was something that parents were very happy and supportive of. And we don't always find that now. And even on that cultural shift, we have young men in the seminary who are now the only practicing Catholic in their family.
That is a big change.
So that's a huge change.
Yeah.
So I think this has truly affected then a guy hears the call and says, well, it's not really supported, or is it a profession that's no longer respected? I don't know if that's something I want to pursue. So I think guys need more support, and I think our parishes need to do a better job of supporting vocations, praying for them, speaking out. And of course, we know from a fact that it is the personal invitation of someone saying, have you thought about being a priest? I think you'd be a good priest. Have you given thought to that? Can I pray for you?
That's what I was wondering about. What is the tug? And you're saying the tug is the personal. Obviously, God calls, but there's a personal interaction people have with mentors or friends or people they know who.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. You're not going to do something. You know, it's like you say to your parents, "I think I want to be a doctor," and your mother says you're not bright enough. See, it would be the same thing. The guy says, "Well," girl says, "Well, maybe I'm not bright enough."
Yeah.
You know. So, but for the guy who says, you know, I'm thinking about the priesthood, the young lady who says, I'm thinking about being a sister, thinking about being a nun, to say, oh wow, I will pray for you. Even that's a great one. Number one, I will pray for you in your discernment.
Yeah.
You know.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Well, let's change the topic a little bit here because I know our listeners want to hear about this. A huge responsibility of your office is the annual priest assignment process. Sometimes this involves a few new assignments, and sometimes, as happened this year, it involves over 20 different appointments. So first, let's talk about pastoral appointment. What causes there to be vacancies, and how does that, tell us about the assignments themselves. How long do they last? How does someone get picked? A little bit about that, and I'll ask some more questions.
Okay. Well, first, let me say that under the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops and by canon law, a pastor is named to take care of the people in a particular area, and he really is a pastor for life. The terms that people talk about, 6 years, 12 years, or whatever, that is given to us by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. But as Archbishop Kurtz told us, and as Pope John Paul II told us, you can forget that. You forget that. Because now it is, and Archbishop Fobb said the other day, and certainly I don't think he was saying it in any pejorative sense, I'm doing the best I can with the number of priests I have. And I think I want people to hear that, because I don't think they fully understand. We don't go out into a cabbage patch and say, I need 10 priests, and we pull them out, we dust them off, we ordain them, and there they go. No, they come from families, they come from parishes. And it's interesting because I said to a lady the other day who was complaining, and I said, when was the last time there was a vocation from your parish? She said, I don't know. I said, then I want you to find out, and then I want you to think about what you can do to raise up some more priests. Okay. Now, so that's about the terms. That's where the terms come from.
That's really good because people hear so much about contract with sports analogies. I contracted for these years. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
Yep.
It doesn't work that way. Now, just as we were talking about the gifts and talents of priests, there are particular needs in particular parishes.
Sure.
So I run a huge school with a $4 million budget. All right. What priest knows how to rub two nickels together?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
How many are in that pool that can run a school? What about, we need to build $3 to $5 million worth of buildings. Okay, who knows how to build a building? Who knows how to do that? And yes, we have the people in the parishes who have the financial background, who have the building background, but there has to be the leader. And people say, who's the lead on this project? And I don't think that people understand when something goes awry, the whole team isn't brought to the chancery. It's the pastor that's brought.
That's right.
So I think it's important then that we look at because sometimes people will say, I don't think Father was a good fit for our parish. I found that very interesting when I listened to that, and I've heard that several times. And I say, I don't know if we had anybody that was going to fit your parish or the way you had drawn up your parish. But hopefully we have sent someone who will take care of the sacraments, who will be preaching, who will do that. Now, we try to do the best we can, and I agree with Archbishop Fobb. We try to do the best we can with what we got to work with, but sometimes maybe we miss the mark, and we have to make some adjustments. So as you said, sometimes even there are further changes.
Well, but I'm saying the obvious for all of us to remember. Priests are human beings. They're not chess pieces.
Right,
They just can't
right.
be put in an assignment and just do this job. That's not how
Right.
that works. It's these are, and the type of ministry in a rural country parish with agricultural industries and things like that going on is very different than a large suburban parish, which is very different than an urban church. So there's different types of pastoring, right?
There is. And I mean, we'll have guys who'll say, I was in the country for 2 assignments. I think it's time for me to come to the city. Or I've been in the city for 20 years. I think it's time for me to go out to the country. So that goes both ways too. And the priests do have some say in that, they want to make a change.
Now, one of the great confusions for folks is the word retired priests.
Yes.
So talk about retirement.
Okay. So the law says in the United States, church law, that from the Bishops' Conference again, years ago, each diocese kind of set up their retirement age. So Louisville set up the age of 70, whereas up the road at Covington is 65. All right? So we retire at 70. Now, that means that you would retire from administration. You don't retire from the priesthood. You don't leave the priesthood. All right? But from administration.
We should underscore that because some.
Okay, yeah. You don't retire from the priesthood. You don't retire from the priesthood.
Thank goodness, because we need the guys.
We need the guys. So you retire. You can retire from administration.
Right.
However, as I think every bishop in the country then goes to those retiring and says, hey, do you want to continue? Now, there are all kinds of incentives, and we are going to work on some incentives in this next financial package of guys staying on. Even when we call on a retired priest to come back in to be an administrator of a parish, there's a whole package, a financial package, et cetera, that goes with that. So some guys do continue way on, 3-4 years beyond that 70. And then even after that, we'll continue to help in parishes without any administration or anything at all. So the retired guy really never retires if he doesn't want to.
Okay. So let's talk about the process of appointing a pastor.
Oh, boy. Talking about prayer.
Okay.
Well, first of all, priests in November receive a letter, a stewardship letter. I wish to stay where I am. I wish to move. Why do I want to move? I'm looking for a change in assignment because. So those letters come to us. The personnel board, which makes up, I think there are 8 priests and the bishop, we then go through all of those letters and we make a big file of all of these things. Who wishes to be moved? Now, I want the people to know that, yes, just as they may be thinking, I hope Father moves, sometimes Father's saying, I want to move. Either I've been here too long, or I think I've accomplished all I can do here. Maybe it's time for a change in personality, change in leadership. And so we look at all of that, and we look at the people who are retiring. And if they're not going to continue on in administration, we have to replace them. And that begins the process. And really, then, it becomes everybody. Everybody's now on the board. Just because you say, well, I was here 6 years, or I was here 3 years, or I was here 1 year, it doesn't make any difference. We have to look at the whole board, again, with what the Archbishop says. Everybody that I have, what is the best I can do? Now, I just, I'm in this move this year. Wasn't planning on being in the move, but I'm in the move. So I got to the cathedral in July, and I'm moving now in June.
It sounds like this is Kentucky, so this is like the basketball portal.
It has become. Yes,
everyone moves to the portal and sees, because the Archbishop has to then figure out, as you said earlier, I'll do the best I can with what I have. Where can we match? Where there's needs. Because besides age and culture and gifts, we also have health. There's not everybody has the same health or the energy. I know here God has blessed us. Thank God for next month. Archbishop will ordain 5 new priests. We have new priests coming from out of the country. We only had 2 retirees, but then 2 more got sick, who can't pastor anymore. Things happen.
They do happen.
This is. It's not like a chess pieces. You just move them around. These are human beings with their own gifts and challenges in life.
That's right. And I think we have to be very realistic about that. And I think when a priest says to us, I can't run something that big anymore, we have to be realistic about that. It's too much. You say, hey, I'm 65 years old. I can't do that. Yeah. So he has to get something smaller. Not that he was opposed to that place. He didn't like the place or anything like that. It's just he's being very realistic about himself and, the energy he has, all of that. So
likewise, it's a debated topic. We have men, young, not always young, but mostly young, who 2 or 3 years after they're ordained, they're already being thought of as how to be a pastor.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
that we're talking about someone in any other profession would have longer time before they're the one in charge. But our times of fewer priests, men are having assignments pretty fast.
Right. And I think that's why we've really, this year in particular, tried to be very careful with where the new men go. We want them to learn as much as they can from their pastors. And I hope that our pastors will be good teachers, because within 2 years, they're probably going to be, in Richmond, Virginia, I think it's 1 year.
Wow.
You're ordained 1 year and then you become a pastor. So we want to use the time, and let me just say this again. I want our pastors really to work at teaching them everything.
Very good. Just talk briefly about our priests from other countries, because that's a relatively new phenomenon for us. I mean, it's gone on for the last 25 years, but there was a time we used to send missionaries to other parts of the world, and now missionaries are coming here. Some parts of the world, like India, where a number of our priests come, they have a large number of priests without enough ministries almost to do. So they're coming here. Tell us a little bit about international priests.
I'd like to talk about India, especially India and Vietnam, both of those in particular, because in Vietnam, of course, it's a communist nation, and the bishops are only permitted to educate so many men each year. So Vietnam has set up, here in the United States, many Vietnamese priests come. I think of New Orleans, Houston, Los Angeles, Louisville, where they are coming, and the bishops are glad to let them come. Now, we have an agreement with 2 dioceses that after 5 years of service, if they wish, they can return to Vietnam. The majority of them have stayed. We do have one that will go after 2 more years. He wants to return to Vietnam. But Vietnam is doing a great service for the whole world.
Sure.
One of our priests that's going to be ordained, Father Ian Tron, he is a missionary to the United States. His sister, who is a nun, is a missionary to France. So, there's 2 in one family in Vietnam. Yeah. So, this is good for our people to hear this, that they are going all over the world. And then, of course, we have India, especially the southern part of India, Kerala, that district, which is very Catholic. We will have 14 priests from India serving in our diocese.
My goodness.
14. So they, too, are all over the world. They're around us. They're in Covington. They're in Knoxville. So they're everywhere, and they're really helping us, and we need them.
Yeah, sure.
We need them, and I know that people who are listening who have them in their parishes know they are very hard workers and very dedicated to the people.
Yeah. Very talented group, that's for sure. How about this? How about one of the questions, and we could probably do a 3-part show with all these issues. What's the best recommendation to a parish? How can they best welcome a new priest? And how do we say goodbye properly? A couple thoughts, maybe?
Well, it's interesting because it depends on the personality of the priest.
Sure.
Some priests don't like a lot of fanfare. They don't want anything. They want it very quiet. It's not like they're leaving the priesthood, so they just want something like, well, I'm just going to a new job or I'm going someplace else. But I think the welcoming is very important. There's always this thing of, okay, there's a new guy coming, and there's always some consternation there. And I say, just wait. Just wait. Welcome, Father. Welcome. Let's see what's going to happen. Inevitably, there are going to be some changes. We all work. And we all work in our factories and our companies and our offices. And when there's a new boss, there's change.
Sure.
So there's always going to be change. That's number one. And I think just wait and see what happens. And then secondly, when the guy is leaving, it wouldn't be bad to say thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, and we wish you all the best. And again, I'm always big on prayer. Father, we're going to pray for you as you come, and we're going to pray for you in your new assignment as you go. I think those are very basic things that are necessary.
Build on that just a little bit before we wrap up our show, which is a kind of a general question. We know Catholics actually care deeply about their priests.
Very much so, yeah.
You hear even the good and the bad.
Oh, yes.
People have opinions about all of this. But how would you advise parishioners to support their priests?
Well, I think the biggest help is come and participate. come and participate. Come to Mass, get involved in the committees, help Father with the work of carrying on the faith. That, I think, enlivens the priest. Because the priest doesn't want to think that, well, I'm the only one out here and I've got a few solid people helping me. Where's everybody else? So I think be around, make time. We always talk about, well, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. This is about prioritizing what should get the time. And our faith lives, I think, really need that. And I think in working with the priest to help enliven our faith lives is essential. And I think this is, again, back to one of the earlier things we talked about. What is the change? What is the huge change that the priest is dealing with? And that is, are priests really interested in what I am trying to do and what I'm offering here? And ultimately, for the salvation of souls.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Very good. Father Chandler, we could talk about many topics. This is a really important one. We're going to have you come back because we got lots of other things to ask you about.
Oh,
but
boy.
I want to thank you for your service to this local church. Also, in many, many parishes you've served in, great pastors pastoring out in the country, and then in the city and in the suburbs. But you've also served the national church with the military, with the need that was in Texas for a while. I thank you for witnessing this archdiocese in all those capacities, as pastor, as vicar now, but also around the country. So we thank you for that and the work you do. We all appreciate you. I'm glad you could be with us for this edition of What's New in ArchLou. We thank our viewers and listeners for joining us this month, and we look forward to being with you again next month.